Hello guys, I welcome you all to this session. So continuing with TCS Core Vita questions, today we are going to discuss about the lazy student problem. Yes, this is also a question from pre-qualifier round only. So I'll display the question first. Take a look at the question. As usual, pause the video, read the question, try to understand as much as possible. Okay, so take a minute or two to read the question and then proceed with the explanation part. Okay, see, first of all, before I explain the question, there are some very basic mathematics which you should understand to be able to solve this question. Okay, for example, the topics which we should know are probability, combinations, modular multiplicative inverse and co-prime numbers. Okay, guys, I'm not going to proceed on an assumption that you know all these concepts, so we'll just skip the explanation. No, that is not what we are going to do here. Okay, let me just tell you the basics. Whatever is needed to solve this problem, I'm going to explain it for all the four concepts. Yes, so we'll just see what is probability and how to calculate probability. Similarly, what is combination and how to calculate combination. We'll just know the basics, and after knowing the basics, once again you take a look at the question, you'll be able to understand it. Okay, so first starting with probability. All right, so for probability, the simplest problem will be choosing this dice. Yes, so we all know that a dice has how many faces? Six faces, right? First hand has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now take a look at the question that I display here. When a dice is thrown, what is the probability of getting an even number? Okay. See, generally when a dice is thrown, it could be any number, right? What is the range of the obtaining numbers? Generally, when you throw a dice, it could be anything from 1 to 6, right? We have no control over that. The possible outcomes could be anything from 1 to 6, okay? So now you want only even numbers. So what is your requirement? Your requirement is even numbers. What are the even numbers here? 2, 4 and 6. This is your requirement. So the required outcome is 2, 4 and 6. Is this clear? Okay. So I have the possible outcomes. We have the required outcomes. Now we are going to calculate the probability. To know the probability, understand this, you don't need the elements. Okay. You don't need the elements. You just need to know the count of elements. For example, here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 means I have 6 elements, right? It doesn't matter what value you have here. All that matters is how many values you have. Okay, it doesn't matter what value you have. You need to focus on how many values you have. Okay, so how many values in possible outcomes? N of p is nothing but possible outcomes. How many possible outcomes? 6 possible outcomes. Okay, what about the required outcomes? We have 3 required outcomes. Is it clear? Okay, so I'm just taking the count. N of p is nothing but number of possible outcomes and number of required outcomes. I have 6 possible and 3 required, right? 6 possible and 3 required outcomes. Now, to calculate probability formula is nothing but number of required items by number of possible items. Okay, the lesser value. What will be the lesser value? The required outcome will be the lesser value. So, lesser value, required outcome divided by possible outcome. Okay, substitute the values. What is n of r value? 3. Divide by what is n of p value? Number of possibilities is 6. 3 by 6. So 3 by 6 is equal to 1 by 2. Okay. So the probability of getting an even number is 1 by 2. Similarly, if I ask you the probability of not getting an even number. Look at this. The probability of not getting an even number. Okay. Same thing. What is the total possibilities? First, total possibility is 1 to 6. Anything is possible. But my output should not be an even number. If it should not be an even number, 1 is not an even number. Yes, so 1 can be obtained. 2 is a even number, skip that. 3 is not a even number, so 3 can be obtained. 4 is a even number, skip that. 5 is not a even number, 5 can be obtained. 6 is a even number, so skip that. So what is your requirement here? You can have 1 or 3 or 5. Okay. So required outcomes is 1, 3, 5. Now to calculate probability, what did I tell you? The values are not important. The count of values is important, right? So now take the count of values. What is the number of possible outcomes? Number of possible outcomes is 6. And what is the number of required outcomes? Number of required outcomes is 3. So how will we calculate probability? N of r divided by n of p, right? We'll use that formula, n of r divided by n of p. In this problem also, n of r is 3, n of p is 6. So 3 by 6, answer will be 1 by 2. I hope I made it clear up to this point. Okay. So now if you observe something based on the last two problems, what was the first problem? Probability of getting a even number. Yes, probability of obtaining a even number was 1 by 2. The first problem which we solved. Second problem is probability of not obtaining a even number. If you look at it, both are opposites of each other. When you roll a dice, what will happen? You will either get a even number or it will not be a even number. Only this is possible, right? For any event, you will either get an odd number or not an odd number, either an even number or not an even number. So this is P of your requirement. This is the opposite of this. Can you understand? So the opposite is what I call as P of R complement. Complement or R bar, however you want to read it. Okay. So if you look at it, obtaining even is half probability. Not obtaining even is also half probability. So when you see, when I add both the probabilities, what will be a result? When I add both the probabilities, 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2, which is 1. Okay. So remember this, probability of requirement plus probability of not requirement. Okay. When you add both the probabilities, your answer will be 1. Okay. Remember this. So now next, so probability, we have the formula for probability. What is the formula for probability? Number of required items divided by number of possibilities. Yes. So remember this formula. We will need this formula. Okay. So that is the formula for probability. Next we'll move on to the topic combinations. What do we mean by combinations? Combinations means, let me show you an example. Let me say I have 4 marbles here. Okay. So from this 4 marbles, I'm telling you choose. I'm not telling you arrange. I'm telling you choose any 2 marbles. Clear? From the 4 marbles, I'm telling you choose any 2 marbles. So how will you choose them? You can choose them as yellow and red, or we can choose them as red and blue, or violet and blue, or yellow violet, or violet red, or yellow green. Yes, so you can have so many combinations like this. If you look at it, you choose it as yellow red or red and yellow, it doesn't matter, you'll be having the same combination only. Okay, the order doesn't matter, which pair are you choosing, that is what is important. Okay, so count all these pairs. So total of how many pairs do we have here? We have a total of 6 sets. Okay, this 6 set is what I call as combination. Okay, from a set of 4 marbles, I'm choosing 2 marbles. Yes, in how many ways can we choose them? We can choose them in 6 ways. This 6 ways is what we call as combination value. Is it clear? Okay, so now the terms, the mathematical terms which we'll use here is the 4 marbles, right? This is nothing but your availability. This 4 marble is your availability. The availability is termed as n. Okay, mathematically this is termed as n. N is nothing but available values. Okay, next case, this 2 marbles. From n values, we are choosing 2 values. Yes, the chosen number of values is what we call as R. So do you understand n and R? N is nothing but number of availabilities. R is nothing but how many am I telling you to choose. That is what we call as R. Okay. So what is this 6? This 6 is nothing but number of combinations possible. Yes, number of ways of choosing them. Number of combinations possible. This is what we represent as NCR. NCR is nothing but number of sets that can be formed, which is nothing but the combination. Okay, so I hope you understand what is N and what is R. N is nothing but available set. R is nothing but how many we will choose. Okay, this is a basic combination example. Right, now let me show you the type of problem that is needed for us. For the required question, which type is needed, we'll discuss that type alone, not all the types of combinations. Okay, that is not needed. Whatever is needed for this session, I'll explain you that type. Okay, look at the question here. A group consists of 8 men and 5 women. Okay, so a group is made up of 8 men and 5 women. Yes, you are supposed to find the number of committees of 5 persons. Okay, I'm going to form a committee. The committee consists of how many persons? 5 persons. You are going to choose these 5 persons from 8 men and 5 women, but you will not choose them randomly. What is the condition given here? committee should consist of at least 3 women. Is that clear? Your group is totally containing 8 men and 5 women. Yes, from this 8 men and 5 women, that is from the total of 13 persons, from a total of 13 persons, we are going to choose 5 persons. Yes, so it could be all men, it could be all women, or 4 men and 1 woman. However, it has many possibilities, right? But you cannot choose it with all the possibilities. The committee should contain at least 3 women. Okay, so in that case, what we'll do is we'll form a table like this. Yes, because my condition has women separately. I need at least 3 women. So form a table like this. One column is for number of men, other column is for number of women. Okay. Total, this is nothing but the total. How many men do we have in total? 8 men. And how many women do we have in total? 5 women. Yes. Okay. Now look at this. At least 3 women. What do we mean by at least 3 women? Minimum of 3 women. So the values could be greater than or equal to 3, right? 3 and above, that is what we mean by at least 3 women. See, to pass the exam you need at least 35 marks, which means you should have 35 or above. That is what we mean here. So at least 3 women. When I say at least 35 marks, it means you should get 35 and above. So at least 3 means 3 and above. So what are the chances here? I can choose 3 women, right? So I can choose 3 women, or I can choose more than 3 women, which means I can choose 4 women. Yes, I can choose 3 women, or I can choose 4 women, or I can choose 5 women also. Because at least 3 means 3, 4, 5, anything is possible, right? So now what did I tell you? The committee consists a total of how many persons? 5 persons. Yes, look at this point. Committee consists of 5 persons. Yes, so if I choose 3 women, my first chances I can choose 3 women. If I choose 3 women, remaining should be men. Yes, from a total of 5, 3 are women, remaining should be men. So how many will be remaining? 2 persons are remaining, those 2 will be men. Okay, so next case, if I choose 4 women, remaining should be men. How many will be remaining? 1 is remaining. Okay, last case, if I choose 5 women, no space is there for men, because committee should consist of 5 persons. And how many women have we chosen here? We have chosen 5 women, right? So there are no men that can be chosen. In that case, value will be 0. I hope you all understood up to this. So what is this? We are choosing from the available set. We are choosing the required values, which means it is a combination. Okay. So now I'm going to write it in terms of combinations. How can I write it? Look at the first one, from 5. So what is this 5? This is nothing but the n value. Okay. From 5, we are choosing how many women? 3 women. So this 3 is nothing but the r value. Can you understand this? From 5, we are choosing 3. So this is n and 3 is r. So how can I write this? What is the number of sets we said? Number of obtainable sets is n, c, r. So in this case, it will be 5c3. From 5, we are choosing 3. So number of available values will be 5c3. Okay. Similarly, in the next case, your answer will be 5c4. From 5 women, we are choosing 4 women, which means our answer will be 5c4. Okay. Next case, from 5 women, we are choosing all 5 women. So it will be 5c5. Okay. So this is nothing but the number of possibilities. I'm not telling you the result, I'm just representing it. Okay. Similarly, come to this side. We are choosing from men. What is the total number of men here? 8 men. So from 8 men. So n value in this case will be 8. From 8 men, you can choose 2 men or 1 man or no man. Yes. So how can I write the first one as? You can write it as 8c2. From 8, we are choosing 2. NCR. Okay. Next one can be written as 8c1. Last one can be written as 8c0. Okay. So what is understood from here? When I should form a committee of 5 members, what are the possible outcomes here? Look at the table alone. Okay, I'm considering the table alone. The possible outcomes could be What is the first case? 3 women and 2 men. Yes, you can choose 3 women and 2 men. Can you all understand this? Yes, either you can do it this way, or okay, you can choose 3 women and 2 men, or you can choose 4 women and 1 man. You can choose 4 women and 1 man. That is possible. Or we can choose 5 women and 0 men. Yes, that is what we understand from here. Either you can use the first type or second type or the third type. Okay, always remember this. When I say and, okay, when I connect them with and, use multiplication operator. When we connect them with or, use addition operator. Okay, this is an important part of combinations. If the sentences are connected with and, use multiplication. If the sentences are connected with or, use addition. Okay, so now how can I write this? How will I choose 3 women? How can we choose 3 women? 5C 3 ways. Yes, so 3 women can be chosen in 5C 3 ways, and 2 men can be chosen in how many ways? 2 men can be chosen in 8C 2 ways. Is it clear? 3 women in 5C 3 ways, 2 men in 8C 2 ways. So 5C 3, 8C 2. How are we connecting these two? 3 women and 2 men. So and means multiply in between. Is it clear? 5C 3 into 8C 2. Okay. Next we have it as 4 women and 1 man, right? So 4 women. How can I choose 4 women? 4 women can be chosen as 5C4. We have it here. We have already derived it, right? So 4 women can be chosen as 5C4 and 1 man can be chosen as 8C1. Okay? And in between we have and. Since we have and, multiply. And last value 5 women and 0 men. How can we choose 5 women? 5C 5 ways. And how can we choose 0 men? 8C 0 ways. Okay, 5C 5 and 8C 0. In between what do we have? And so multiply. Okay, so I have all the 3 values. These 3 values are connected with OR operator. Instead of OR, what has to be substituted? Plus has to be substituted. So substitute plus in between. Is it clear? Okay. So now I have one single value. When I solve this equation, we will have one single value. But I'm not going to solve this equation because that is not needed for us right now. Okay. You just need to understand how to approach the problem. That will do. Okay. Don't solve it. Just understand how I got all these terms. Okay. So once you understand how we get all these terms, you will be able to solve similar problems. So if I tell you choose at least 3 men, you will know how to alter it. If I choose 3 men, how many women? If I choose 4 men, how many women? We will be able to alter all the values. Okay. I hope I made it clear. So what do we understand from this? Combination means it should be represented as NCR sets. Okay. Find n value, find r value. When you do that, combinations can be completed. Okay. So we have finished off probability and combination. Next we are going to understand about modular multiplicative inverse, right? Before I tell you what is modular multiplicative inverse, first you need to understand what is multiplicative inverse. Okay, two numbers A and B are multiplicative inverse if their product is 1. Multiplication is nothing but product. When I multiply the two numbers, my product should be 1, which is A into B is equal to 1. Let me give you an example. 3 into, if 3 is multiplied by 1 by 3, if 3 is multiplied by 1 by 3, our answer will be 1. Yes. So what can I say? 3 and 1 by 3 are multiplicative inverses. Okay. 3 into 1 by 3 is 1 means 3 and 1 by 3 are multiplicative inverses. So that is what I say as B is multiplicative inverse of A. 1 by 3 is multiplicative inverse of 3 and A is multiplicative inverse of B. I hope you all understood this. Multiplicative inverse means their product should be 1. So for A, what is multiplicative inverse? B, which means for 3, the multiplicative inverse is reciprocal 1 by 3. Okay. For 1 by 3 also, the multiplicative inverse is reciprocal, which is 3. Okay, that is what I mean by multiplicative inverses. But here they are using the term modular multiplicative inverse, right? So what do they mean by modular multiplicative inverse? See, modular multiplicative inverse means first, what is modular operation? In C program, we use modulus operator. What will modulus operator do? Modulus operator will give you the remainder, yes, which means multiply them and get the remainder. Just multiplicative inverse means the product should be 1, okay. Modular multiplicative inverse means the remainder should be 1. Yes, I can represent it like this. A into B modulus M should be 1. Last time we considered only A into B. This time we will be considering A into B mod M. So when I take mod M, that becomes a modular multiplicative inverse. Okay. So let me, so what do we call A and B as? A and B are modular multiplicative inverses to each other. Okay. So take a look at an example here. Let me say A value is 3 and M value is 11 and B value is 4. Okay. So when I have all these three values, I can write it as A into B modulus M. Remember the previous equation, A into B modulus M. What is A value here? 3. B value is 4 modulus 11. 3 into 4 modulus 11 is nothing but what is 3 into 4? 12. It is equal to 12 modulus 11. So divide 12 by 11. When 12 is divided by 11, when 12 is divided by 11, what will be your remainder? So minus 11, the remainder will be equal to 1. Yes, when 12 is divided by 11, the remainder is equal to 1. Can you understand this? Mod is nothing but consider the remainder. Since the remainder is equal to 1, I can say this is a modular multiplicative inverse. Okay. So when you read it, you will read it as um, 4 is modular multiplicative inverse of 3. Yes, 4 is modular multiplicative inverse of 3. Under which modulus? Under 11 modulus. See, in this place, if I had it as 10, if I have it as mod 10, in that case, these are not inverses because mod 10 means your remainder will be 2. If your remainder is 2, that is not an inverse. Okay. Only when you have it as mod 11, the terms are multiplicative inverses. Okay. So 4 is modular multiplicative inverse of 3. Under which modulus? Under 11 modulus. Similarly, what else can you say? 3 is modular multiplicative inverse of 4. Yes. If 4 is multiplicative inverse of 3, then 3 is multiplicative inverse of 4. Okay. Under which modulus? Under 11 modulus. Okay. I hope I made it clear. So now this is what I call as modular multiplicative inverse. We'll write it down. Modular multiplicative inverse means A into B modulus M should be equal to 1. So three terms are clear for us: probability, combination and modular multiplicative inverse. Now the last term which we are going to see is co-prime numbers. You know what is prime numbers, right? Prime numbers means they have exactly two factors. What are the two factors? 1 and itself. But co-prime numbers means for co-prime numbers, their GCD will be 1. Okay, two numbers A and B are co-prime if their GCD is equal to 1. What is GCD? Greatest common divisor. Yes, HCF or GCD. If their GCD is equal to 1. How can I find it? Let me give you an example here. Say A is equal to 16 and B is equal to 27. Individually, 16 is a composite number and 27 is a composite number, right? But when you divide 16 and 27, see, there is no number that can divide both 16 and 27 except 1. Yes. So what is the GCD of 16 and 27? GCD of 16 and 27 will be equal to 1. Since the GCD is equal to 1, I am going to say that these two numbers are co-primes. Which two numbers? 16 and 27 are co-primes. Okay. So what do you understand from co-primes? Co-primes means the GCD of the two numbers will be equal to 1. I hope I made it clear up to this point. Alright. So now you know all the four terms: probability, combination, modular multiplicative inverse and co-prime numbers. Alright. So at this point we'll understand the problem statement. Now you take a look at the question. Teacher provides a question bank consisting of n questions. So this n questions are present in the question bank. Okay. And all the questions in the test will be from this question bank. So there is going to be a test and all the questions in the test are collected from the question bank only. Okay. Due to lack of time and his laziness, Kodo could practice only M questions. Do you understand what is happening here? I gave N questions. For example, let me say I gave 5 questions. Okay. Kodo could practice only M questions, which means, let me say, he practices only 2 questions. Is it clear? I gave 5 questions. He practices only 2 questions. Why? Because of lack of time and his laziness, right? So now, look at the next line. There are T questions in a question paper selected randomly. In a question paper, you have some set of questions. You have T questions, okay? So this T questions is also, let me say it as 2. Can you understand? Question bank has 5 questions, okay? He studied 2 questions. In the question paper also, they are asking how many questions? 2 questions, yes? So, passing criteria. If he should pass the exam, he should solve at least one of the T problems, okay? If Kodu should pass the exam, he should pass at least one problem, okay? So, what is the probability that Kodu will pass the test? So when you look at this question, you understand that we need probability. They are asking for probability directly. But there is one indirect concept hidden here. What is that concept hidden here? I gave you 5 questions. Go to study the 2 questions. We are choosing 2 questions, right? So which means there is combinations involved here, right? So they are choosing 2 questions from a set of 5 questions. They are choosing 2 questions, which means combinations is involved in this problem, okay? So combinations is needed and probability is also needed, okay? Look at this. So here, let us assume question bank contains 5 questions. Yes, Kodu has and 2 questions are chosen. From a set of 5 questions, 2 questions are chosen. And Kodu has studied how many questions? Kodu has studied 2 questions. Alright. What is the passing criteria? He should know at least one question. Remember the term? At least one question should be known so that he can pass the examination. Okay. What should we find here? We should find the probability of passing the exam. Clear? We have 5 questions. In the question bank, I am choosing 2 questions. That person has studied 2 questions. Okay. So you need to find out what are the chances that he will pass the exam. Right. So let us first analyze the problem. See, only for this problem, I'll explain it step by step. Once you understand the concept, we'll move it into the formula part. Alright. So now they tell you question bank contains 5 questions. Let me say 5 questions are Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 and Q5. Clear? Question bank has 5 questions. I'm numbering them as Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 and Q5. What is the next thing they say here? From these 5 questions, we are choosing how many questions? We are choosing 2 questions. Yes. Did they tell you which 2 questions will be chosen? No. I can choose any 2 questions. So what is this? Combinations. Okay. I'll write down the combinations. Look at this. These are the possible combinations. Totally how many possibilities? 10 possibilities. If you want, you can write and check also. You can have it as Q1, Q2 or Q1, Q3 or Q1, Q4 or Q1, Q5. You can also have it as Q2, Q3, Q2, Q4, Q2, Q5. Yes, in many manners, you can choose 2 questions. So these are the total possibilities. Totally how many possibilities? 10 possibilities are present here. Okay. So now they told you that Kodo has studied 2 questions from the question bank, right? He has studied 2 questions. They are not telling you which 2 questions. Yes. So I'll assume that he has studied Q3 and Q4, the highlighted cells. Can you all understand this? From a 5 questions, I'm choosing 2 questions. So these are the possibilities of choosing 2 questions. Okay. These are the possibilities of choosing 2 questions, and I know Kodu has studied random 2 questions. So I'm going to assume, just assumption, I'm assuming that he has studied Q3 and Q4. So if I ask Q1, Q2, will he pass the exam? No, because he didn't study Q1, he didn't study Q2. Next one. If I ask Q3, right, in Q1, Q3, he knows Q3, right? He knows Q3, which means he will pass this one. So this is the first case where he'll pass. Next one, Q1, Q4. Has he studied any question in this? Yes, he has studied Q4, which means he will pass this one also. This is the second chance. Next one, if I choose Q1, Q5, he will not pass because he doesn't know both the questions. If I choose Q2, Q3, he will pass. Why? Because Q3 is known to him. Okay, so this is the third possibility. Yes. Next, if I choose Q2, Q4, will he pass? Yes, he will pass because of Q4. Okay, so this is the fourth possibility. Next, if we choose Q2, Q5, will he pass? Not possible because he didn't study both the questions. Okay. Next case, Q3, Q4. When I say Q3, Q4, look at this. He has studied both the questions, right? He has studied both the questions. Q3 is also known to him. Q4 is also known to him. So if I choose it this way, he will definitely pass. Yes. So this is the fifth chance where he can pass. Guys, just because he studied both the questions doesn't mean he has higher chance, right? What do they say? He should know at least one question. That is all they ask here, right? So you should calculate whether he knows at least one question. If you look at this, at least one question is known to him. So he will pass, which means this is also adding up to one chance only. Just because he knows two questions, it doesn't mean he has two chances. This is one question paper. Combining two questions, we have one question paper. So this is the fifth chance of passing the question. Now look at the next one, Q3, Q5. Which one does he know? He knows Q3. So he will pass. So this is the sixth chance. Next one is Q4, Q5. So if he studies this, in this also he knows Q4. So if he choose Q4, in this one also he will pass. So this is the seventh possibility. Is it clear? Okay. So total of how many possibilities are there? Total of 7 possibilities. Now think about probability. What did we say in probability? Probability means number of requirements divided by number of possibilities. Okay. What is the requirement here? The requirement is he should pass the exam. In how many chances he will pass the exam? In 7 chances he will pass the exam. Okay. Okay, so number of possibility. What is the total set of possibilities? Totally we have 10 possibilities. So number of possibility is 10. And what is our requirement? Requirement is 7 because in 7 chances he will pass the exam. Can you understand this? In 10 ways I can choose the questions. In 7 ways he will pass the exam. So what is the probability of passing the exam? Probability is n of r divided by n of p, which is 7 by 10. I hope it's clear up to this. Probability is 7 by 10. Yes, because even if one known question is asked, it doesn't matter whether both are known. Even if one of them is known, he will pass the exam. Okay. Probability of Kodu passing the exam will be 7 by 10. Am I making it clear up to this point? So the probability that he passes the exam is 7 by 10. So if you look at this, it involves both combination and probability. Okay. So when I code it, we cannot use this naive approach, right? I cannot form all the sets, and from these sets, if you count the possibilities, this is going to be very, very time consuming. For 5 questions, this is okay, but if I give you 20 questions or 30 questions also, this method is going to fail for us, right? So this is where the combinations formula enters the scene. Okay, you have to use the combinations formula and the probability formula to be able to calculate it directly. Okay, so now look at the input format and output format. Alright. So what are they telling you here? Contains single integer t denoting the number of test cases. We'll come back to this line. Okay. First line of each test case contains 3 integers n, t and m. They have already explained what is n, t and m. N is nothing but number of questions in the question bank. T is nothing but number of questions he studied, right? And m is nothing but number of questions that will be chosen in the question bank. Okay, these are the 3 terms we already have. Now look at the output. In the output, you have to print a single integer. What is this integer? Look at the points here. If the probability is P by Q, so they are telling you calculate the probability. The probability will be a fraction only. What is the probability? 7 by 10. So it is a fraction. So what are they telling you? Find the probability. If the probability is P by Q means first step is you have to find the probability of passing. The numerator is P, the denominator is Q. That is the first step we are going to do. Okay. Second step, look at the second point here. P and Q are coprime. After finding P and Q, you need to check whether P and Q are co-prime. That is the second step. Look at the third step. Print P into multiplicative inverse of Q modulo what this is nothing but 10 power 9 plus 7. Okay, this is nothing but 10 power 9 plus 7. Okay, you have 8 zeros in between followed by 7. So this is 10 power 9 plus 7. What should you print here? MUL inverse. What is this MUL inverse? It is nothing but multiplicative inverse under modulo operation. Okay. So we are going to find the multiplicative inverse under modulo operation. I already told you what is the meaning of multiplicative inverse under modulo operation, right? So the third step is finding multiplicative inverse under modulo operation. So I hope I have made it clear. So our algorithm is going to contain 3 steps, okay? The 3 steps involved in the algorithm are: first one is calculate the probability. After calculating the probability, P and Q are co-prime. Check whether P and Q are co-prime. After checking whether P and Q are co-prime, you need to find out the multiplicative inverse modulo of 1007. Okay, 10 power 9 plus 7. Yes. Shall we start with the procedure now? Okay. See, to find out the probability, we need combinations. I already explained that. Yes. From combinations only, we'll find out the probability. Okay. So, we'll focus on the questions now. First, I'm going to find the combination. Consider the same sample data from a set of 5 questions. From a set of 5 questions, 2 questions are chosen and 2 are learnt. Okay. As what I'll do is, I'll just parallelly add it inside the program part also. Okay, so question bank questions. QB questions is nothing but question bank questions and learned questions and chosen questions. Okay, I'll name the variables like this. If I have it as NTM, it will be confusing. Okay, so I have it as question bank questions. So in this problem, what are we assuming? From a set of 5 questions. So the question bank contains 5 questions. How many has he learned? He has learned 2 questions. And how many are chosen? The number of questions chosen is also 2. Okay, so this is what is given in the question. Now we'll proceed, and as I proceed parallelly, we are going to code it also. Okay, so at least one question should be known to Kodu to pass the exam. Look at this, we are using the term at least one question. What does it mean, at least one question? Greater than or equal to one question. Do you remember that men and women problem? 8 men and 5 women. We were supposed to choose at least 3 women. When I tell you at least, what should you do here? You are going to create a table. Okay, what do we know already? N is 5. From this 5 questions, we are going to choose 2 questions. So our value is 2. Don't directly calculate it as 5C2. If you directly calculate 5C2, what does it indicate? Total number of possibilities. Yes, before you calculate total possibilities, calculate the, okay, first we'll calculate total number of possibilities then. Yes, I have n is 5, r is 2. Alright. So what is the formula for NCR? N factorial divided by r factorial into n minus r factorial. We know what is factorial. 5 factorial means 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. Okay. So what is the number of possibilities of choosing the question? I'm not talking about passing the exam. In how many ways can I choose the question? In how many ways can I choose the question? From 5 questions, I am choosing 2 questions. So the number of ways is 5C2. From 5, we are choosing 2. So the number of ways is 5C2. Okay. So use this formula, 5 factorial divided by 2 factorial into 3 factorial. Substitute, you will get your result as 10. Is it clear? So what does this 10 indicate? 10 is nothing but total ways of choosing the question. This 10 is number of possibilities of choosing the question. Okay, not passing. We are just saying the number of possibilities of choosing the question is 5C2. Okay, so we'll do it here. Ways of choosing the question. Okay, what are the ways of choosing the question? For calculating the ways of choosing the question, combination of n and r. That is what we'll usually say. Yes, this is a function, guys. We'll develop the function as we move on. For now, I'll fill up main alone. Okay. You need to know the number of ways of choosing the question. How will I know the number of ways of choosing the question? I should supply n value. I should supply r value. What is n value? The total available set. From which set are we choosing? From the question bank only we are choosing, right? So n is nothing but the question bank questions. Okay, n is nothing but number of questions in question bank. From this question we are choosing how many questions? 2 questions. So r is nothing but number of questions chosen. So combination of question bank questions followed by chosen values. Can you all understand this? Yes. Okay, so we'll define the function. Before we define the function, just understand this. So the number of ways of choosing the question is combination of question bank questions divided by chosen questions. Is that clear? Okay. Next one. Now that I know 10, this is the total possibilities. Now what should you find? Number of ways for passing the exam. See, to calculate number of ways for passing the exam, you should know at least one question. So what did I tell you? Whenever we have at least one, form a table. Okay. You need to know at least one known question. So it should be greater than or equal to 1. Is it clear? So to know at least one question, it should be greater than or equal to 1. So what are the chances here? You will know only one question, right? There is a chance that you will know only one question, or there is a chance that you will know both the questions, right? In the question bank, sorry, in the question paper, there are 2 questions. There is a chance that you will know only one question to pass. I'm not speaking about failing the exam. To pass the exam, there is a chance that you will know only one question, or there is a chance that you will know both the questions. Yes, see, the question bank contains 2 questions in total, right? Question bank contains 2 questions. If one question is known, obviously other one is unknown, right? The question paper contains 2 questions. You know one question, which means the other one is unknown. Okay. What if you know both the questions? There are 2 questions. You know both the questions, which means the number of unknown questions will be 0. Can you all understand the table? Okay. Similar to that men and women problem, I'm filling up this table. If you know one question, 1 is unknown. If you know 2 questions, 0 is unknown. Okay. So in this case, how can you write it? What are the number of known and unknown questions? See, from a total of 5 questions, from a total of 5 questions, I have learned 2 questions, right? From a total of 5 questions, I know 2 questions. So total, I know 2 questions, which means how many questions are not known? From the question bank, I don't know 3 questions. Okay, from the question bank, I know 2 questions, I don't know 3 questions. Can you all understand this? From the question bank, I know 2 questions, I don't know 3 questions. So my chances are, in the question paper, they will ask me one unknown question. Yes, I don't know 3 questions. From these 3 questions, they may ask any one question. I cannot determine that, right? I don't know 3 questions. From these 3 questions, they may ask any one question. So the possibility is 3C1 in the question paper. Is it clear? From 3 unknown questions in the question paper, they are asking one question. So this is 3C1. Similarly, from 3 unknown questions, they are choosing 0 questions. So this is 3C0. Okay. Next one, from 2 known questions, they are asking only one question in the question bank. So it will be 2C1. And from 2 known questions, they are asking only 2 known questions. So this will be 2C2. Is it clear? Okay. So from 3 unknown, I can ask one unknown or no unknowns. From 2 known, I can ask both the questions or only one question. It is dependent. Okay. So similar to that men and women problem, how can we read this statement? We can read it as, so your question bank contains 3 unknown questions and 2 known questions. From these 3 unknown questions, I can choose 1 or 0. From 2 known questions, I can choose 1 or 2. So how will you read this question as? Number of sets is equal to, you can read it as 1 known and 1 unknown. Yes, the possibility is I may ask 1 known question and 1 unknown question, right? I may ask 1 known, 1 unknown, or I may ask 2 known and no unknown. Is it clear? Okay, this is the ways of choosing the question so that you will pass. Okay, so now one known and one unknown. How can we write it? We can write it as 2C1 and 3C1. It is connected with AND operator, so multiply. Similarly, next case 2C2 and 3C0 connected with AND operator, so multiply. In between we have the OR operator. What should we do when we see the OR operator? Add the values. Is it clear? Okay. So simplify this equation now. When you solve this equation, 2C1 into 3C1, 2C2 into 3C0. Solve the values, guys. You'll get the answer as 7. What is this 7? This is the chances of passing the exam. Okay. To pass the exam, you need to know at least one question. Yes. So the chances that you will know at least one question is 7 chances. Now, how can we calculate? This 7 is nothing but number of possibilities of passing the exam, which is nothing but your required value. That is your requirement, right? Passing the exam is the requirement. So number of possibilities of passing the exam. Okay. So what do we know already? We have calculated that n of possibility is equal to 10. Yes. Number of ways of arranging the questions is 10. We know that. Number of ways of passing the exam is 7. We have calculated that. N of required is 7. So how will you calculate the probability now? N of R divided by N of P, which is 7 by 10. We get the same answer here, right? But if you notice, there is a fault with this method. What is the fault with this method? Let me explain. See, the question which we dealt was, I have 5 questions, 2 are chosen, 2 are learned. Yes, what if the question is something like this? From a set of 50,000 questions, 30,000 questions are chosen and you have learned 200 questions, right? There is no guarantee that you will always have a single digit number. In the question bank, I have 50,000 questions and I'm choosing 30,000 questions. So what is the chance that you will pass the exam? See, what did I tell you? Form a table and from that table derive the values. Based on the values, you can continue. This is what we discussed, right? Imagine I have learned 200 questions, right? I have learned 200 questions. So my known value is 200, right? And at least one should be asked. So what should you do? One question is known, two question is known, three question is known, four question is known, up to 200 questions you need to calculate. Can you understand? Yes, your table will contain 200 rows. If your table contains 200 rows, what will be the execution time of your program? Imagine that, to calculate the combination for everything, then adding them, then calculating the probability. This is going to take so much amount of time. You will not be provided that much time. By that time, your program will be time limit exceeded. In that case, your program will not be accepted at all. Is that clear? So this method is not time efficient. Okay. So think about it a little. How else can I approach this problem? See, instead of calculating the probability of passing, I can calculate the probability of failing, right? What do we know? Sum of all probabilities is 1. I've already told you this. Sum of all probabilities is 1. So, probability of passing plus probability of failing is equal to 1, right? So, I'm going to calculate probability of failing the exam. Is that clear? Okay. We are going to calculate probability of failing the exam. Why are we calculating probability of failing the exam? Because only with that the method is going to be simplified. Efficient algorithm will be obtained. Yes. So I'll tell you how to calculate probability of failing. See, to pass the exam, you need at least one question, which means it might be one question or two questions or three questions. However, it might be many possibilities, right? But to fail the exam, I can directly say the answer. In order to fail, what is it? No known questions should be asked, right? If you have to fail the exam, then not even one question should be known. Only then we will fail the exam. Yes. So all selections should be done from unknown questions only. Is that clear? If you have to fail, in that case, all the selections should be made only from unknown question. If I choose a known question, you will pass, right? So make sure that all selections are made from unknown questions. How can I do that? See, requirement is choosing all questions from unknown set. We have a total of 5 questions. We have a total of 5 questions. How many has he learnt? He has learnt 2 questions, right? So how many questions are not learnt? How many questions are unknown? 3 questions are unknown. Can you all understand this? He has learned 2 questions, which means 3 questions are unknown. When 3 questions are unknown, what are we telling here? Choose all questions from unknown set. Okay. So all choices should be made from unknown set only. Can you all understand this? Yes. So if you are going to choose 2 questions, choose both the questions from unknown set. Only then you will fail, right? So choose the questions from unknown set, which means from these 3 questions, choose the 2 questions. Clear? From the unknown questions, choose the 2 questions, which is what we write as 3C2. Okay? Apply the formula. 3C2 value will be 3. I hope I made it clear up to this. So what is this 3? 3 is the number of ways for failing the exam. 3 is nothing but number of ways for failing the exam. Okay. So if 3 is number of ways for failing the exam, what is the probability of failing? 3 by 10. So from the probability of failing, how can we calculate probability of passing? Probability of passing is, what do we know? Sum of probabilities is 1. So probability of passing is 1 minus probability of failing, right? Probability of passing is 1 minus probability of failing, which is 7 by 10. This is the answer we got all the time. But if you look at this time the calculation is simplified. Instead of forming a table and calculating it step by step, this time the concept is very simple, and that is all we want here. Can you all understand this procedure? So this is how we are going to approach the problem. From the probability of failing, we are going to calculate the probability of passing. Is that clear? Okay. So, how to calculate probability of failing? To calculate probability of failing, you need to calculate n of r divided by n of p. What is r? Requirement. P is total set. Yes? Okay. N of r is nothing but number of ways of failing. In how many ways can you fail? Only when I choose unknown questions you will fail. Yes? See, let me just code it parallelly. Ways of choosing. Now I'm going to calculate ways of failing. Okay, that is also a combination only. We are choosing, right? So ways of failing is combinations of. Okay, to fail I should choose only from unknown questions. Yes, how will I know unknown questions? From the question bank. From the question bank, eliminate the learned question. Okay, okay, I'll avoid confusions here. We need to calculate the unknown questions. Okay, how will we calculate unknown question? From the question bank, from the question bank, eliminate the learned questions. This is clear? From the question bank, if I eliminate the learned questions, that will be the unknown questions. Yes. So how will we calculate the ways of failing? To fail, all choices should be made from unknown questions only. Yes. So from unknown questions, from the set of unknown questions, choose all the questions. Can you understand this? Yes, it is n comma r. What is n? N is nothing but your available values. What is available? Not all the questions. We are choosing only from unknown questions. So from this unknown questions, choose the required number of questions. That will be the r value. Can you all understand this? Yes. So we have ways of choosing. We have ways of failing. Is it clear? Okay. So now moving back. I have calculated the ways of failing, right? Now, next step, we need to calculate the number of possibilities of question paper. Have we done this already? The number of possibilities of the question paper means from the total questions, how many ways can I choose? Yes, that is also already done. So I have both the values. I have n of r, I have n of p, right? So how will we calculate probability of passing? Probability of passing. Use the probability concept. We know that probability of passing plus complementary. What is the complementary of this? Probability of not passing. Yes. So probability of passing plus its complement is 1, which is what we are writing as probability of passing plus probability of failing. Remember, getting an even number and not getting an even number, the total will be 1. Similarly, passing and not passing, the total is 1, which is what I write as passing plus failing probability is 1. Okay, I hope I made it clear. So now, what do we know? Passing is equal to 1 minus P of failing. See, what is the formula for probability of failing? Probability of failing is n of r divided by n of p, right? Now simplify this equation. Look at this equation. Simplify this equation. Take the LCM and simplify it. You'll have it as n of p minus n of r divided by n of p. Can you all understand this? Yes. So total possibilities minus unknown possibilities divided by total possibilities. Can you understand this? Yes. Total possibility minus unknown. Requirement is nothing but unknown, right? For failing, requirement is unknown. So total minus unknown divided by total. That is the probability of passing. Okay. See, if you remember the question, they told you probability is represented as P by Q, where P and Q are co-primes, which means I don't need a decimal value. I need the numerator value and I need the denominator value. That is what they are asking here. Yes, for the probability they want P by Q. So they want the numerator and they want the denominator. What is the numerator? N of P minus N of R is the numerator. Is this clear? N of P minus N of R is the numerator. And what is the denominator? N of P is the denominator. Can you all understand this? Yes, don't divide it and don't give me a decimal. They need the probability. And how can we calculate the probability? N of P minus N of R is the numerator, which is P, and Q is the denominator. Is it clear? Okay. So I'll add it here. We need the values of P and Q. Okay, I need the values of P and Q. What is P and what is Q? See, as we have seen here, Q is nothing but the denominator. What is the denominator? Total possibility is the denominator. So Q is nothing but ways of choosing. Total possibility is the denominator. And what is P? P is total minus ways of failing. Yes, ways of passing is nothing but total minus failing count. Okay, so total minus failing count. Total minus failing count. That is the P value. I hope I made it clear up to this point. So let me just print both the values, percentage D divided by percentage D, P comma Q. Okay, so for 5 to 2, what is the values of P and Q? 7 by 10. That is what we have been learning all this time, right? So we haven't completed the combinations function, so we won't get it as 7 by 10 for now. So let it stay right here. Okay, so now we'll fill up the combinations function, right? Combinations function means combinations of, I will give two values, n value and r value, right? Int n comma int r. What is the formula for combinations? Formula for combinations is n factorial. Factorial of n. N factorial divided by n minus r factorial into r factorial. Right? This is the formula for combinations. Factorial of n divided by n minus r factorial into r factorial. Yes. See, I'll tell you a simpler technique for this. When I say 5c2, what will we do? 5 factorial divided by n minus r factorial, which is 3 factorial into 2 factorial. Right? How will you simplify this? 5 factorial is 5 into 4 into 3 factorial, right? 5 factorial is 5 into 4 into 3 factorial divided by 3 factorial into, what is 2 factorial? 2 itself, 2 into 1. 2 factorial is 2 into 1. So if you observe, this 3 factorial and this 3 factorial can be cancelled. Yes. If I cancel them, I have 2 terms in the numerator and 2 terms in the denominator. Can you all understand this? We have 2 terms in the numerator and 2 terms in the denominator. Let me consider one more example. 7c2. Okay. How will we calculate 7c2? N factorial divided by n minus r factorial into r factorial. Yes. Okay. Better I'll have it as 7c3. Only then we'll understand. So 4 factorial into 3 factorial. Okay. So now simplify this. 7 factorial is nothing but 7 into 6 into 7 into 6 into 5 into 4 factorial. Yes. 7 factorial is 7 into 6 into 5 into 4 factorial divided by, how can I write the denominator terms? 4 factorial into 3 into 2 into 1. Yes. So now what are the terms to be cancelled? This 4 factorial and the numerator's 4 factorial can be cancelled. So now if you look at it, numerator has 3 terms, denominator has 3 terms. Right. That is how you have the values. So instead of calculating the factorials, you can just directly calculate this answer. Look at this. What happens in the numerator? Starting from 7, 3 terms are considered. Okay, what happens in the denominator? Starting from 1, 3 terms are considered. Can you all understand this? From 7, 3 terms. From 1, 3 terms are considered. Similarly, in this case also, starting from 5, 2 terms are considered. Okay, starting from 5, 2 terms are considered. In this case, starting from 1, 2 terms are considered. Can you all understand this? Yes, okay. So what do you observe here? Let me take this line to the top so that you'll understand. For 7C3, starting from 7, okay. For 5C2, starting from 2. Look at this. When you compare these two statements, this 5 and this 7 is nothing but the n value. Yes, if it is 7 here, we have 7 here. If it is 5 here, we have 5 here. So what can I say? Starting from n. Right? Starting from n, here we consider 2 terms in both the cases. Here we consider 3 terms. What is this 2? What is this 3? It is nothing but the r value. Yes, if I have r as 2, consider 2 terms. If I have r as 3, consider 3 terms. Okay, so this is r. So what can I say? The numerator is starting from n. Starting from n, r terms are considered. Okay, the denominator is starting from 1, r terms are considered. Can you all understand this? Yes, instead of calculating factorial and everything, we can just do this process. When I do this process itself, I'll get the right answer. Is it clear? So when you calculate combinations, don't use a naive formula. When you simplify the formula, you observe this is the algorithm. Okay, so use this algorithm here. To calculate combinations, we are going to use this algorithm. Okay, numerator is starting from n, r terms are considered. Denominator is starting from 1, r terms are considered. Okay, so we'll do this. I'll have a iteration variable and a variable to store the numerator, to store the denominator, and to store the final result. Yes, we are going to multiply all the values parallelly, right? If we have to multiply all the values, initial setup should be 1. Numerator is initialized as 1, denominator is initialized as 1. Okay, see, numerator as well as denominator both will consider how many terms? R terms. Okay, so the iteration should run R times. Less than or equal to R, ITR plus plus. Why ITR is running till R? Because for the numerator, if it is 2, 2 terms. If it is 2, 2 terms. So both numerator and the denominator will contain how many terms? 2 terms only. Okay. So ITR will take values 1, 2, 3 and it goes on. Right. So for the denominator, what has to be multiplied? Look at this. For the denominator, 1, 2, 3, like that only it has to be multiplied. Yes. So for the denominator, I can say ITR value is multiplied because ITR takes the value 1, 2, 3, right? So for the denominator, what is multiplied? ITR is multiplied. For the denominator into ITR. But what about the numerator? See, for the numerator, in the first iteration, n value has to be multiplied, right? Look at this. In the first iteration, 7. What is the 7? N value. In first iteration, 7 is multiplied. In the next iteration, 6 is multiplied. So when ITR is 2, multiply 6, which is nothing but n minus 1. Okay. In the third iteration, you have to multiply n minus 2 and this goes on. So I can write this as n minus 0. So in the first iteration, n minus 0. Second iteration, n minus 1. Third iteration, n minus 2. So what do you observe here? This 0, 1, 2 is nothing but ITR minus 1 multiply n minus ITR minus 1. Right? If ITR is 1, minus 0. If ITR is 2, minus 1. If ITR is 3, minus 2. Okay? Choose n minus ITR minus 1 and multiply it with the numerator. I hope I made it clear up to this point. Okay? To calculate the numerator, start from n. So first, n minus 0 should be multiplied. Next, n minus 1, 6 should be multiplied. Right? So n minus 1 will be chosen. Next, n minus 2, which is 5, has to be multiplied. Okay? So I hope it is clear up to this point. After calculating the numerator and denominator, what is the final result? Final result is you have to divide these two values. Numerator and denominator has to be divided. So result is equal to numerator divided by denominator. Okay, and return the result value. That's it. Is it clear? Okay. So when you calculate combinations, don't use a naive formula. Use the simplified formula. Finally divide the values and return the result. Yes. So now combinations is defined. So what should be your output for passing? For passing, the numerator should be 7. The denominator should be 10. Shall we check that? Look at that. 7 by 10. Can you all understand up to this? So far we have calculated the probability alone. Yes, I hope I made it clear up to this point. So what have we done? We have found out how many ways we have failed. From the number of failing ways, we are calculating number of passing ways. Okay. So combinations formula is simplified, and right now I have the probability. Remember the 3 steps we discussed. First step is calculate the probability. What is the second step? Okay, after calculating the probability, what should you check? P and Q are co-prime. What is the meaning of co-prime? Their GCD is 1. Okay, so the next step, we are going to check whether P and Q are co-prime, which means GCD should be 1. So what should I do here? I need to calculate the GCD. After doing this, we are going to calculate GCD of P comma Q. Okay, calculate GCD. I'll name the function as calculate GCD and store it in GCD. Okay, have a variable named as GCD. So now what should we do? We should calculate GCD of P and Q and check whether the GCD is 1. Okay, so how will you calculate GCD of P and Q? See, don't use the naive algorithm like dividing it by each term and finding out the GCD. Generally in maths, what you'll do is you'll divide it using the L division. Yes, using the L division, you'll divide and find the GCD. Yes, in this case, don't use the L division. I'll tell you a simplified efficient solution. Yes, this algorithm is called as Euclid algorithm. Euclid algorithm is specifically known for finding the GCD of two numbers. Okay, so let me consider I'm going to find out the GCD of 31 and 7. Okay, so when you try to find out the GCD of 31 and 7, what you have to do is divide 31 by 7. Can you understand? 31 is divided by 7. Okay, when 31 is divided by 7, 7 fours are 28. So what will be the remainder? Remainder will be 4. Is it clear? When 31 is divided by 7, remainder is 4. Is the remainder is 0 or non-zero? Remainder is not equal to 0. Yes, look at this. When your remainder is not 0, what you have to do is bring this 7 for the next division. Some will also call this as long division method. So what are we going to do here? Take this 7 and bring it as the next dividend. So now 4, the remainder becomes the divisor and 7 becomes the dividend. Is it clear? Okay. So now if you divide it, 7 minus 4. What is 7, 7 by 4? When you divide 7 by 4, 4 ones are 4, the remainder is 3. Is it clear? Even now if you look at this, the remainder is not equal to 0. So what did I tell you? When the remainder is not equal to 0, take the 4 and bring it here. Right? Now divide these two values. When you divide these two values, your remainder will be 1. Is it 0? No, it is not 0. When it is not 0, divide it again. Okay? So 1 3s are 3. Now the remainder becomes 0. Okay. When the remainder becomes 0, whatever is the divisor, this is your GCD. Can you all understand this? Yes. Repeat the division. When your remainder becomes 0, Whatever is the divisor, that will be the GCD. Okay. So now let's try to code this parallelly. We will have a function named as calculate GCD. So to calculate a GCD, let's provide two numbers, num1, num2. Okay, I'm providing two numbers, num1 and num2. Now we are going to calculate the GCD of these two numbers. Alright, how can I calculate the GCD of two numbers? To calculate the GCD, what did I tell you here? See the steps again. Okay, 31 and 7. This is num1. Okay, for convenience, I'll have it as A and B, guys. This is A and this is B. Okay, so what are we doing here? We are dividing A and B. When we divide, what is important for us? The quotient part or the remainder part? We are focusing only on the remainder part. Yes, so divide the two numbers and get the remainder. Have a variable named as remainder. So remainder is equal to num1 modulus num2. Okay, so now when you divide them, you'll get the remainder. What should you check? If the remainder is not 0, okay, if your remainder is not equal to 0, if your remainder is not equal to 0, what should you do? You have to repeat this same process. Can you all see that? We are repeating the same process but for different values. What are these values? See, last time this was B and this was A. Yes, and this is nothing but the remainder value. This time what happens? This becomes the dividend A and this becomes the divisor B. Can you all observe this? Yes, the 4 has become divisor B, 7 has become dividend A. So what do you observe here? A has obtained which one's value? B's value. Can you all understand this? Yes, A has obtained B's value, or in other words, num1 has obtained num2's value, right? Num1 has obtained num2's value, and also you can say B. B was initially 7. Now B takes which value? The reminder's value. B has taken the reminder's value. Okay. So num2 has taken the reminder's value. Is it clear? Okay. Divide them. If your remainder is non-zero, change the values. Num1 becomes num2 and num2 becomes remainder. Okay. After changing them, again what you should do? You have to divide and get the remainder, which means we are repeating the remainder process. Okay. After changing, we are repeating this process. This is clear? Okay. So get the remainder. If the remainder is not 0, change the values and go to the loop and repeat the same process. Clear? Okay. So divide, divide, divide. When should you stop? When the remainder becomes 0. Okay. When the remainder becomes 0, whatever is the divisor, that will be your GCD. Yes. So check whether the remainder is 0. If your remainder is 0, whatever is the divisor, which one is the divisor? Num2 is the divisor. That will be your GCD. Okay. So how will what should you do with the GCD? Just return it to the main function. So return num2. That's it. Okay. If your remainder is 0, divisor is your GCD. If it is non-zero, change the values and repeat the same operation. So this is nothing but loop, repeating the process. So while of 1, there is no specific condition here. Why? Because at any point I will definitely reach the remainder 0. So when I reach the remainder 0, return that GCD because I need the GCD here. Okay. So return that GCD. Okay. So now I'm going to print the GCD. Printf %d, GCD. The numbers that we are working is 7 and 10. The GCD of 7 and 10 is 1. Look at that, you get the GCD as 1. If the GCD is 1, the numbers are co-prime numbers. Yes? Okay, if it is co-prime, I don't have any issues. What if the numbers are 6 and 10? What if P value is 6 and Q value is 10? If P value is 6 and Q value is 10, I have a problem here. What is the problem? The GCD will be 2. Right? If P is 6 and Q is 10, the GCD will be 2. In that case, are these co-prime numbers? No, they are not co-prime numbers. So, convert them as co-prime. See, when I convert them as co-prime, they will not have any common divisor, right? So, what is the common divisor now? 2 is the common divisor. eliminate 2 from both of them. Okay, to convert them as co-prime, eliminate the common divisors. Okay, if you eliminate the common divisor, what is the greatest common divisor? 2 is the greatest common divisor. Eliminate 2. 6 by 2, your answer will be 3. 10 by 2, your answer will be 5. Yes, now look at 3 and 5. 3 and 5 are co-prime numbers. Can you all understand this? Yes. If your GCD is not equal to 1, when should we do this? If your GCD is not equal to 1, it means they are not co-prime numbers. So how can we make them as co-prime numbers? Divide them by GCD. Divide P and Q by GCD. Okay. So P is equal to P by GCD and Q is equal to Q by GCD. Is it clear? Divide them divide them by GCD. So when I come out of this point, they will be co-prime numbers. No matter what the GCD is, after this if, P and Q are definitely co-prime numbers. Is it clear? After this if condition, P and Q are definitely co-prime numbers. That is the understanding we have so far. Okay. So we have completed almost the entire program, guys. Probability is done. Co-prime is calculated. Now what is the last step to be done here? Remember the question? Okay. After doing this, the last step to be done is, yes, P into multiplicative inverse of Q modulo 10 power 9 plus 7. Okay. Last step. How will I calculate the result? The result is equal to P into multiplicative inverse of Q modulo 1 followed by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 807. Okay. P into multiplicative inverse of Q modulo 10 power 9 plus 7. So whatever you get as result, just print it. Print of percentage D comma result. Okay. So the only process which is remaining now is calculating the multiplicative inverse. Okay. This multiplicative inverse is also calculated in modulus value only. Okay. So I have one more function which is multiplicative inverse of a number. Okay, how shall we calculate the multiplicative inverse? See, this is the only point where we need to focus. Others all are easy. In multiplicative inverse, guys, there are multiple solutions. Okay, but for that, you need to know some algorithms also. For this problem, I'll tell you the naive solution. If possible, you can also implement extended Euclidean algorithm. Okay. I don't want you to confuse between Euclidean and extended Euclidean. So I'm not going to involve that one now. I'll show it using naive method. Further on as we proceed, once we learn extended Euclidean algorithm, we'll implement it here. Okay. So the naive algorithm is, see, listen here. What do we mean by multiplicative inverses? Multiplicative inverse means A into B modulus m is equal to 1. That is what we call as a multiplicative inverse, right? So what, let me say a value is known. Okay, because I'm calculating the multiplicative inverse of one number. Okay, so a value is known, and what is a value? Okay, let it be some value. Modulus value is also known. What is the modulus value? They have said here multiplicative modulus of 1 followed by 8 zeros followed by 7. So m value is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 zeros followed by 7. Yes, you know a value, you know m value. So you need to calculate multiplicative, modulo multiplicative inverse of a, which means you need to calculate the value of b. Can you understand this? Yes, you need to calculate modulo multiplicative inverse of a, which means we have to calculate the value of b. How can I calculate b? See, what are they telling you here? A into b modulus m should be equal to 1. Yes, the product modulus m should be equal to 1. Yes, so how can you understand this? See, if I say the product of two numbers should give a remainder 1 means, it means a into b should be multiple of m plus 1. Correct or not? Yes, only when you have it this way, Only when a into b is some multiple of m plus 1, you will get the remainder as 1. Why will I get the remainder as 1? Because when you divide this value, some multiple of m plus 1, some multiple of m plus 1 modulus m. Think about it. I have m's multiple. I have added 1 to that multiple. Okay. When you perform modulus operation, definitely your answer will be 1 only. Right. Because the multiple of m will give the remainder as 0. The multiple of m will give the remainder as 0. So you will get this 1 only. So what is my ultimate aim? A into b should be a multiple of m plus 1. Okay, to get the modulo value as 1, a into b should be some multiple of m plus 1. Okay, so what should you find? You need to find the value of b. What is the value of b? B is nothing but multiple of m plus 1 divided by a. Is it clear? Okay, how will you calculate b? Some multiple of m plus 1 divided by a will give you b value. Is it clear for all of you? Yes. So choose a multiple of m. See, when you divide it by a, your result should be a whole number value. Okay. So choose a multiple of m such that this condition is satisfied. Can you all understand this? Okay. So let me say you have a value. Okay. You have a value and you know the m value. What is the m value? M value is nothing but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7. Yes, m value is this. Okay. So what are we going to do? We are going to choose a multiple of m. Okay. So start from the first multiple. Start from the first multiple. Proceed till less than m. Okay. Not till m. Proceed till less than m. So starting from the first multiple, what should you check here? You shouldn't take the multiple itself. You should take multiple plus 1. Okay. So, ITR into M. Multiple plus 1. Okay. This multiple plus 1, if it is divisible by A. Can you understand this? If this multiple plus 1 is divisible by A, then we can calculate the B value, right? Only then you will get the whole number. Can you all understand why I have this condition? If you don't have this condition, your result will not be an integer. They have specifically said print a single integer, okay? So if your result should be an integer, it should be divisible by A. Only when it is divisible by A, B value will be a whole number. So how can I calculate B value? Multiple of m plus 1 divided by a. So multiple of m plus 1 divided by a. I hope it is understandable for all of you. Take all the multiples only to get a whole number value. Check whether it is divisible. If it is divisible, divide it and get the whole number value. Okay. So as soon as you get the whole number value, you can stop the process and return B. Is it clear? As soon as you get a whole number value, stop the process and return B, which means this B is nothing but the multiplicative modulo value. Okay, this is the multiplicative inverse. So how did we calculate multiplicative inverse? Take some multiple of m, add 1 and divide it by 8. This is a naive algorithm, guys. This is not the efficient one. To know the efficient one, as I told you, understand extended Euclidean algorithm. I don't want to complicate things. So first, understand Euclidean. Further on, in some other problem, you'll definitely get extended Euclidean algorithm. There I'll explain extended Euclidean algorithm. Clear? Okay. So now if I execute this, okay, some error. What is it? Result is undeclared. Okay, here in main I haven't declared result. So declare result. Okay, and here inside the function B is undeclared. Sorry about that. Declare B. Take a look at the output. You get the modulo value. Yes, and one risk here is, see, 10 power 9 plus 7 is a huge value. So to be on the safer side, I'm going to use unsigned long integer. Okay, unsigned long integer. In all the cases, just to be on the safer side, we'll use it this way. So if you use unsigned long integer, percentage LLU. Here also percentage LLU. Wherever you print it, use it as percentage LLU. Clear? So instead of integer, throughout the problem, we will use unsigned long integer. Okay, just increasing the memory to its maximum because we have very huge values here. 10 power 9 plus 1 is such a huge value. So to be on the safer side, we'll have everything as unsigned long integer instead of integer. Okay, numerator, denominator, result, and the input value. It's not really necessary, but just to be on the safer side. Okay, so now if you look at this, what they are saying is first line contains a single integer t denoting the number of test cases. See, what I've done here is, first of all, I've initialized the values. Let's not initialize the values. Let's scan the values. Okay, so scanf percentage LLU, percentage LLU, percentage LLU. So we are going to scan three values. First one is number of questions in the question bank. Second one is learned questions. Third one is chosen questions. Okay. What they are saying is you are working only for one case, right? In this case, this will be the number of values. That is what we are saying. Here, they will give you multiple scenarios also. They will tell you that what if I have a three question banks. Okay, in the first case I have one question bank with 5,000 questions. In the second case I have 10 questions in the question bank. Like that, they'll give you multiple scenarios. So this process should be continued for all the scenarios. Okay, this should be executed for multiple test cases. That is what they mean here. Okay, this process, the scanning and calculation process, everything should be done for multiple test cases. So scanf percentage d, address of t, itr. Okay, we already have the variable itr. No. Okay, so itr is equal to 1, itr less than or equal to t, itr plus plus. Clear? Each time scan a value and calculate, print the output. That is what they mean here. Okay, so here now let me execute this. I'm telling you there is going to be semicolon is missing. Yeah, in scanf semicolon is missing. Okay, so let us work only for one test case. So 4, 2 and 1. Okay, take a look at the output. 5 followed by 8 zeros followed by 4, which is perfectly right. Yes, so we are done with the program, guys. So I hope you all understood this. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments. We'll clarify it. Okay, thank you.